All right, we're going to go ahead and call this to order. First bill on the agenda is Senate Bill 2283. It's the repeal date for the Public Service Commission. That bill, we are just going to extend the repeal date from 2024 to 2028. And that's an explanation of the bill. Does anyone have any questions on it? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Title sufficient to pass.
Motion is title sufficient, do pass. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that one passes. Our next bill is Senate Bill 2300. Recognize Senator Parker to present that one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a bill we brought up in AET yesterday. There've been a couple of bills. I believe the chair proposed one of them. This comes to us from the Secretary of State, and you'll recall several years ago we set up the Occupational Licensure Review Commission, and that triumvirate, basically rules and regulations that are passed are moved up to the Attorney General, the Governor, and the Secretary of State for review. There's been some concern that because the Attorney General has counsel on all of the occupational licensure boards already, and then has that oversight, there have been a few states that have taken the move to remove the Attorney General from that triumvirate structure and replace it with another executive level position. And so what this bill would do on line 11 is it would change the triumvirate from being the Governor, Attorney General, and Secretary of State to being the Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and Secretary of State as the reviewing parties and commission. The other change that occurs is that to call a meeting, currently right now the meetings are called by the chair. This would require that meetings be called by majority votes of 2 of the 3 request a meeting, they can call a meeting. And that information can be given to any member of that triumvirate instead of just the chair, as the current state is now, which is line 23. And then it just has on line 52 through 54, just proposal that we changed in committee from 120 to 150 days that the commission shall act upon the things before them with within 150 days of submission. So very similar to the bill that you introduced with just a small change or 2, but I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions on the bill? Seeing none, do you have a motion?
Motion would be title sufficient, do pass.
Committee sub, correct?
Committee sub, yes.
Motion's title sufficient, do pass committee sub. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, that bill passes. Next bill is Senate Bill 2454. Recognize Senator Leno to present that bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is really a cleanup bill. This is an exciting day for the coast because this is a regional utility act that was established after Katrina to help with help collaborate on water and sewer and utility needs that came up around the after effects of Katrina. All of the work has been completed that this board was in charge of, and this now needs to be repealed, and that's an explanation of the bill. All we're doing is repealing this particular board, and it goes away.
Any questions on that bill? Seeing none, do you have a motion? Or actually, motion's title sufficient, do pass. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, that bill passes. The next bill, Senate Bill 2486, deals with procurement and the registration process for proposals. What this bill does is removes the anonymity requirement for submitting a bid. It strikes subsection 2 and renames and deletes the subsection 1 header. Are there any questions about that bill? Seeing none, do we have a motion? Motion's title sufficient, do pass. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, that bill passes. Next bill is Senate Bill 2514. Recognize Senator Tate to present that bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 2514, you'll see that we have a committee sub here. What this simply does is update how our Mississippi Veteran Affairs Board will be made up. Currently, it is amongst the 5 old congressional districts, and all this will do is update it to say whatever number of congressional districts we have. That is, there'll be someone appointed from each congressional district, and the remainder of the 7 will be at large. These are appointments by the governor. That's all this bill does. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Any questions on that bill? I see none. Motion is title sufficient, do pass. All in favor, say aye. Oh, I'm sorry. Motion is title sufficient, do pass committee sub. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The next bill is Senate Bill 2563, and I recognize Senator Delano to present that bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, or of the committee, this is something that we've worked on for a number of years. Senator Blackwell has been instrumental in working through this. This is the Cosmetology and Barber Board, where we're making some changes that would allow them to merge successfully. In the years past, there's been a couple of key points that have needed to be worked out. And over the summer, I know that there's been a lot of work that's been done between the barbers and the cosmetology board to work through this. I see that both boards are here today. Both of the current boards are here today. They have come to an agreement on how this merger would look. And they ended up suggesting a board in this bill that is it's a total of 7 members. 3 of them will be from the cosmetology related field, 3 from the barber related field, and 1 from the state health officer. They've worked through a lot of things. This deals with barbers, cosmetologists, anesthetists, and nail techs. And as I've gone through this bill, it conforms all of these different practices to be the same way with respect to their practice permits, their licensures, the applications. There's not any significant changes in fees. Actually, there are no changes in fees. There are some updates to some violations in part of the code sections. But I think that they've done a very good job of coming together and realizing that they are better as one merged board than they are trying to work independently. So hats off to these 2 groups for making this happen. And I will yield for any questions if there are anything specifically that the committee would like to know, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Delano, some barbers have reached out to me about what their oversight will be as far as being under the same rules, I suppose, of keeping their stores with cosmetologists. Would you walk me through that a little bit more detail?
Well, could you be more specific with the question itself? Are you
Yes.
concerned about barbers that are going to be working in cosmetology shops or?
No, I'm sorry. Barbers who have their own shop, they're concerned that they will be held to the same standards that cosmetologists are currently held under. And they say that maybe the layout of their stores or some of the guidelines that they're supposed to be under are different than cosmetologists.
I think I would agree that in the past there are different practices, and that I have not seen anything in this bill, and I'm confirming with the barber board now, but I believe that nothing is going to change, or there will not be any significant changes that you will see at a retail location, or things that will change with respect to how a barber will conduct its business today or upon passage and implementation of this plan.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions by the committee? Senator Parker.
So I think maybe what the chairman was asking is a concern I've had some people ask me about is as far as the hours that are required. I believe there's been a difference in hours between cosmetology and barber. This formation of the board is not going to move the barber hour requirements up. And if they're different, it's going to allow them to continue to operate as they have been, but for a board kind of work together.
Correct. That's correct. And those were the same concerns that I think that we were all hearing from our barbers. I've certainly had those on the coast as well. And those are the issues that we work through right now. Mr. Chairman, if there are any specific questions, if you would be so inclined to recognize either the barber or the cosmetology board, they're here if they want to ask any specific questions. But what I've been told from the barbers that I've worked with and then the consultations that we've had regarding this bill is that the barbers are happy with the way that this is being presented, and it is conforming to their condition or their current practices at this time.
I think that satisfies my question, Mr. Chair.
And there were also one other thing. There was an issue with temporary permits back in the summer. Like if you go through your school and you do your apprenticeship programs, there was some hangups getting a cosmetology license, and the barbers were concerned that they would be, having those hangups as well. They did conform all of the temporary licensing time periods to 180 days or 6 months for all the different types of temporary practices. So that was another issue that we addressed and made sure that it was conforming.
Senator Brady. Okay. Any other questions? You're welcome to come up and field a question or make a statement. If you would, just go to that microphone and hit the button. Or this one.
There is one question that we would like addressed, and that is on our instructor license for barbers. Currently, the cosmetology board requires 1,000 hours to become an instructor. We have a different kind of set of rules for that. It's 600 hours if you're a year or less. No, I'm sorry. It's 600 hours at 2 years or more, 1,000 hours if you're a year or less. We would like that to be conformed to 1,000 hours total and no difference, if that's okay. That would be the only change that we would need.
Mr. Chairman, that is on line 649, if I'm following this correctly. And I do not think that harms the bill. I think that gives the barbers a little additional security for their practice and making sure that they have that instruction hours in training. So if you're so inclined, Mr. Chairman, I would make that or offer that as an amendment, or ask that it be offered as an amendment by a member of the committee.
Mr. Chair, I'll make that amendment if it pleases the chair.
Okay.
Oh, and I'll tell you what, Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I'm looking at a copy of the bill that's the deleted text version. So the line number that I just provided to you is 60 what?
607.
607 and line 607.
Okay. Does the committee understand the amendment? Does anyone have any questions on the amendment? Vote is on the amendment. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that amendment will be adopted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
While you're up there, just to verify, as I understand it, barbers and cosmetologists have different rules for the way that their stores are set up, placement of items maybe, the way that hair is cleaned up. I hear different things, and I'm just shooting from the hip here on
That
things
is
I've heard.
somewhat correct.
Will that stay the same? Will there be, when you send people out to inspect a cosmetology or a beautician or whatever it would be, or a barber, are they going to be following different rules for those storefronts?
The way, this is just the way I understand it. The way everything is set currently, we're basically shifting that over to one board, that the board will manage but it will manage it in a way that the shop shouldn't see any difference in the way they're operating.
Thank you very much. Any further questions on this bill? Motion? Motions, Taos Efficient do pass committee sub. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. Next bill on the list is Senate Bill 2600. Recognize Senator Sparks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2600 is simply a bill to create a study committee to address parole and probation officers that are currently under community corrections in Mississippi Department of Corrections to consider moving those services to the Department of Public Safety. Those individuals are certified law enforcement officers, and I think we need to look at this to see a better way to manage people in the community. That is a brief explanation of the bill.
Are there any questions on the bill? Senator Norwood?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Sparks, now, the study committee would basically come back with, if it's to be a reality, when it would go with recommendation as to when it would take effect and all of that.
Any other questions? All right, ready for your motion? Motion's Taos Efficient do pass. All in favor, say aye. Are there any opposed? That bill passes. Next bill is Senate Bill 2788. And recognize Senator Sparks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 2788 moves the home inspector board over to the appraisal board out from under the real estate commission. We did this, I believe, last year with the appraisal board. Worked out really well, and they felt like the home inspectors would be better suited over there. I was asking committee about the real estate commission, and I was approached by the executive director, and he said they support this move. So the appraisers are for it, the home inspectors are for it, and the real estate commission's for it. So that's what the bill does, is move the home inspectors over with the appraisers.
Thank you. Are there any questions about this bill? Ready for your motion?
Title sufficient, do pass.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That bill passes out. The last novel we have today is Senate Bill 2799. Recognize Senator Sparks to present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't say it's a simple bill. It has a simple concept. The point of 2799 is to address appointments to agencies, boards, and commissions, and the directors of such, that they would be done in a more uniform manner. What the bill does, and I know we were short on time going in. I'll be glad to proceed or do whatever you'd like for me to do if you feel we have time to cover it.
I'd like to begin. If we need to put it on hold to run into session, we can do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But what this would do would have the majority of the boards to be appointed in the first year of a new term of a governor. Of course, there are many appointments the governor makes, lieutenant governor, other people in state government make these appointments. Many of them are subject to advice and consent of the Senate. We're trying to make sure that we have some continuity that we are bringing in, and I will have potentially a conceptual amendment as well. But we are wanting to advise and consent these people that are for these important positions, as well as the executive directors. There have been some circumstances where we, advise and consent some, we don't advise and consent others. Some have a 3-year term, 4-year term, 5-year term. It's really something that's been a creation over the last, 75 years of government, that we had agencies, board, and commissions, and we seem to do it differently every time we do it. One of the things that we will do in this bill is we make the geographical restrictions the Supreme Court districts. That's also been a problem. We've got some agencies, boards, and commissions appointed out of 5 congressional districts as they stood years ago. And so that is another thing that we try to do in this bill. It is staggered so that the majority of the appointments will occur in year 1. The balance of the board would be appointed in year 3, and they would serve 4-year terms. This also addresses the issue of
holdover appointments, that if someone has ended their term after 6 months, that's the end. It's over for them because whether somebody's appointed or not. So it puts a definitive stop on holdovers. It also addresses an issue that rises from time to time, that if a position has not been appointed by the appointing authority, we will put it on a rotation that it will move to the next appointing authority. So for instance, if the governor has an appointment and that appointment's not filled in the 6-month period to fill it, then that would roll to the lieutenant governor. If the lieutenant governor did not appoint someone, it would roll to the secretary of state. If some other appointing entity failed to meet their 6-month obligation, it would start at the governor and then it would go through that rotation. So I think that will help us get things maybe appointed, because some of these boards, agencies, and commissions haven't been able to meet or have struggled to meet to function. The vacancies would be filled in the same manner, that we would make sure that we take care of that. Of course, there's still interim appointments, as there always will be. And we are working to try to make certain that when people are appointed to agency, board, and commission, the appointing authority knows that. So we've tasked the Secretary of State's office to deliver information to the appointing authority on prescribed timelines, because if someone comes in new, and by the way, this bill doesn't go into effect until 2028. Don't want to bother any of the appointments that have been made by current administrations, things of that nature. We're forward looking on this. But what we're trying to do is make sure that everyone knows what their appointment authority is. They know maybe the massive amount of appointments they have to make. The geographic restrictions are clear. The terms are clear. And I think it makes for a cleaner operation for all these agencies, boards, and commissions. That is a brief explanation of the bill. I'll be glad to yield to any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So the intent of this bill is to bring uniformity and continuity to the nomination and confirmation process.
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Chairman. That is its intent. And when we looked at this information, it was just so much different on every board, agency, and commission, it seemed, and we just believed it'd be better government to make it more streamlined.
Thank you. Are there any questions by the committee? Senator Parker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm kind of going through here a little bit at a time. So first of all, I'm about halfway through, but is this the 40, give or take a few, that are under the purview we were talking about before of the OLRC, or is this agencies and commissions? Because I recognize a few on here that I don't think are under the OLRC. How many different boards and commissions are within this bill?
We tried to capture all that are capturable. Some are constitutional and of course would not be subject to this bill.
Yeah.
But yes, our intent is to capture all that fall into this parameter.
Right. And so if you wouldn't mind, just, and then we don't have to have this at this time, but if you can maybe get a list of those, just so I kind of know. And then the other question you meant, the other thing that I had a little question about is on the geographic kind of distribution, because I know, and this is a great idea to kind of get uniformity on this. I know some of the boards are set up on old congressional districts and new, and as you know, would this change the number of board members for any of these boards?
To my knowledge, we did not change membership numbers on any agency, board, and commission in this legislation.
So in a situation where perhaps you had, and I don't know if this is the case or not, but I'm just kind of thinking out loud on it. So say you had 5 appointees from the 5 previous congressional districts, and we pare that down to 4. If that board is going to continue as a 5-member board, is there a formula for, or a method for accounting for the 5th member? Would that
Sure.
become an at-large person, or would that become, how is that dealt with if it is something that's considered here?
And I will double check to make sure on that, but what we were trying to do is make sure that it was 1 to 1 to 1 until it exceeded that, and then there would be either an at-large or, so we have considered that in there, but I will have a more definitive answer for you.
And if that is the case, I think an at-large provision, if there's no intent to change the sheer number of the board or commission. And again, I think that's something you could probably get some information on pretty quick. But
Yes.
those are my only questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Parker. Senator McCon, did you have a question?
I believe for the most part, Senator Parker handled the majority of that. I was just going through it myself, trying to identify these boards, committees, appointments, and I'm just at C, and we're well over 20. And you've stated that your intent is to grab them all, not to exclude any at this time. Is that right?
Well, we want to grab all that are grabbable, and that's, like I say, some are legislatively or statutorily in a different manner, but I will be glad to get a complete list for the committee, and that way we can see what all's in there.
I do appreciate your work on this.
Thank you.
Senator Norwood?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Park, are there provisions for out-of-session appointments that would need confirmation?
Yes, yeah, there, in other words, we have someone who would be appointed out of session would be considered interim. And an interim could only serve for 9 months, which would put us back into session to advise and consent. And if the Senate chose not to take action on that, that appointment at sine die would then, that seat would be vacated.
And that would be the same for board as well as agency heads that would?
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, it would, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks.
Any other questions? So do you have an amendment?
I do and I guess I would put it in the term of conceptual amendment. Any executive director that is appointed would be subject to the terms. I think that goes back to some of the questions that we were talking about of the 4-year term, as well as advise and consent. So if that hasn't been done, that we would make sure that is in the bill. And I don't know if we'll put these together, but I would have a second conceptual amendment, I guess, after that.
Okay. Does everyone understand the First Amendment?
This just be a question because I have to give this a little thought too. So to each one of these, I think you're just talking about any of them that have an executive director that is under advise and consent.
That's
Because
correct.
I would guess that amongst this large number here, there's going to be different appointing methods and things for the executive director.
Yes, and that's whether they're appointed by a board or appointed by an individual, that they would be subject to the same advise and consent in term.
Okay, so we would have the advise and consent overall instead of maybe some at this point. If
That's correct.
Okay.
Motion is to adopt the amendment. If there's no further questions, we'll vote on the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that amendment will be adopted. You have another amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The second one would be I want to make sure that when we're talking about the Supreme Court districts, and it goes back to if we do have at-large language, is to make sure that the language is in there as configured at the time of appointment. The last thing I want to do is get to a position where Supreme Court district gets redrawn and we end up back in a problem. So I just, for drafting, I just want to make sure for that purpose, if it's not written that way, that we would amend it.
I think that's a great idea. A question?
Everything you say, Senator Sparks, brings another question in my mind. So, because that's another good issue, because we're talking about that in other bills. So in the event that we have, another census come out and as predicted in, 10, 20 years, whatever the case might be, we have a decrease in congressional districts down to 3. Back to the question that I had before, we may want to consider, a remedy for the same kind of situation where, instead of 4 plus 1 at large, it became 3 plus 2 at large or something like that, so that we save, this body from having to go through this same process again. And you may have already done that, but that just brought that question to mind.
Yes, and that is the intention of using the Supreme Court districts would cause that to happen that way. Exactly what you're saying. Yes.
Thank you. I'm happy to put this on hold if we need to come back for more questions. If not, we'll adopt this amendment and or vote to adopt this amendment. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That amendment is adopted, and now we're on the bill. Motion,
Title sufficient do pass committee sub.
committee sub. All right, all those in favor, say aye. Any opposed? All right, that bill will be taken up. Motion to rise and report. Thank
You pass. Committee sub.